Canticle for Leibowitz.
Alleluia, Alleluia.
Part 3 of a series in 15 parts, adapted from a novel by Walter Miller, Jr.
Alleluia, Alleluia.
A Canticle for Leibowitz. Here continueth the chronicle, set down daily by the brethren of the order of Blessed Isaac Edward Leibowitz, in their abbey in the desert of the southwest. And here we set down further the record concerning Brother Francis, he who found by chance the ancient room beneath the earth in the ruins outside the abbey walls. And lo, this room was of very great age, yea, 600 years, and its name was inscribed, Fallout Survival Shelter. And there were 3 mysteries. The pilgrim who passed by that day where Brother Francis was, inscribed upon a rock 2 letters in an ancient tongue that the brother comprehended not. And the second mystery, a skull lying within the sunken room. None knew whose it was, but in the skull was a golden tooth. And the third mystery, another writing. For nigh at hand to the skull was a box, fashioned of tin, and in the box were papers. And these papers were written upon, so it seemed, by our martyred founder himself, the blessed Leibowitz, yea, and in his own hand, with his name subscribed beneath. And among the papers was a picture, fashioned in blue and white, superscribed, Circuit Design. These mysteries did Brother Francis relate unto the prior, Father Cherokee, whereupon the Father Prior brooked no delay for the Lenten vigil, but ordered the brother back to the abbey, much wasted by the long Lenten fast in the desert, and mystified by what had happened to him. Brother Francis staggered back to the abbey.
To Francis, still dazed by the sun and by starvation, the whole thing was a mystery. To his fellow novices, it had the makings of a miracle. To the Lord Abbot, Dom Arcos, it was something best hushed up, a figment of Francis's imagination, a possible source of embarrassment.
You did the right thing, Cherokee. You did the right thing, though heaven knows it's all over the abbey.
Barefooted, fresh from a plunge in the bathing bell, wearing a coyote skin robe, Arcos glared down at his prior.
You know what I'm talking about? You've seen this stuff? Yes, he dropped it beside the road when he fell. I helped gather it up, but I didn't look at it carefully. Well, look it over. Tell me what you think. It's impossible. You did the right thing to send him back before he uncovered more. But of course that's not the worst part. The worst part is the old man he babbles about. It's getting too thick. I don't know anything that could damage our case worse than a whole flood of improbable miracles. A few real incidents, certainly. It has to be established. The intercession of the Beatus has brought about the miraculous. But there can be too much. Look at Blessed Chang, beatified 2 centuries ago, but never canonized. And why? His order got too eager. That's why. Every time somebody got over a cough, it was a cure by the Beatus. Visions in the basement, evocations in the belfry. Well, that could happen here. Last year, Brother Noyen and his miraculous hangman's noose. And now this Francis. He meets a pilgrim wearing what? Wearing for a kilt the very burlap cloth they hooded Blessed Leibowitz with before they hanged him. What? Oh, you haven't heard this yet. Well, all Francis said was, I met an old man. He was wearing a burlap sack tied around with a piece of rope, and he made a mark on a rock, and the mark looked like this. And I couldn't figure out what it meant. Do you know? No, I'm afraid I don't. I wasn't asking you. That's what Francis said. I didn't know either. You do now? Yes. Somebody looked it up. That is a lamed. And that is a sadi. Hebrew letters. Sadi? Lamed? No. Right to left. Lamed Sadi. An L and a TS sound. Now, if it had vowel marks, it might be lutz, lets, lots, lits, anything like that. If it had some letters between those two, it might sound like... guess. Who? Libo... Oh, no. Oh, yes. Brother Francis didn't think of it. No, somebody else thought of it. Brother Francis didn't think of the burlap hood and the hangman's noose. One of his chums did. So what happens? The whole novitiate's buzzing with a sweet little story. Francis met the Beatus himself out there, and the Beatus escorted our boy over to where this stuff was and told him he'd found his vocation. Did Brother Francis say that? No! Haven't you been listening? He tells it sweet and simple. Rather stupidly, in fact, and lets the others read in the meanings. I see. So, send him to me. Now. Come in, my boy, come in.
The Lord Abbot sent for me?
Yes, the Lord Abbot sent for you. Do come right in and shut the door.
Yes, my lord.
Or perhaps it would be more fitting if the Lord Abbot were sent for by you, now that you've been so favored by Providence and have become so famous.
Oh, no, my lord.
You are 17 and plainly an idiot, are you not?
That is undoubtedly true, my Lord Abbot.
Then you are prepared to deny that you met anyone in the desert the other day? That you stumbled on this junk box with no help? And that what I've been hearing from others is only feverish raving?
No, Don Marcos.
Oh, no, what?
I cannot deny what I saw with my own eyes, Reverend Father.
Dear God. So, you did meet an angel, or was it a saint? Or perhaps not yet a saint, and he showed you where to look?
I never said he was an angel.
This is your excuse for believing yourself to have a true vocation? That this, shall we call him a creature, spoke to you, and marked a rock with his initials, and told you it was what you were looking for, and when you looked under it, there this was, huh?
Yes, Don Marcos.
Dear God. What's your opinion of your execrable vanity?
My execrable vanity is unpardonable, my lord.
To imagine yourself important enough to be unpardonable is an even vaster vanity.
My lord, I am indeed a worm.
Very well. Now, about this creature.
Yes, my lord.
No one else saw such a person, you know. I understand he was supposed to have been headed in this direction.
Yes.
That he even said he might stop here.
That's right.
That he inquired about the Abbey, yes?
Yes.
Well, where would he have disappeared to? If he ever existed. No such person came past here. The brother on duty at that time in the watchtower didn't see him. So, aren't you ready to admit you imagined him?
Reverend Father, if there are not really two marks on that rock where he marked, well, then I will...
The marks
certainly...
are there. Faintly. We checked. But you might have made them yourself.
No, my lord.
All right, very well. One last time. Will you admit you imagined the old creature?
No, my lord.
All right. You know what's going to happen to you now.
Yes, Reverend Father.
Then prepare to take it.
The order was in an ancient tradition and had retained from that tradition all of its rigorous austerities.
Dear gracias.
Among these was corporal punishment.
Care to change your mind, my boy?
Reverend Father, I cannot deny. Dear gracias. Dear gracias. Dear gracias.
10 times. With Brother Francis yelping his thanks to heaven for each lesson in the virtue of humility as he was expected to do. The abbot paused after the 10th whack. Francis was on tiptoe and bouncing slightly, tears squeezed from clenched eyelids.
Now, my dear Brother Francis, are you quite sure you saw the old man?
I'm certain.
Oh. Well, all right, you've convinced me, boy. Worse luck for you. You may sit down.
If it's all the same to the Reverend Father Abbot...
All right, then, stand. I won't keep you long. You're to go out and finish your vigil.
Oh,
But,
thank you,
but
Reverend.
you're not going back to the same place. You'll trade hermitages with Brother Alfred and not go near those ruins again. Furthermore, I command you not to discuss the matter with anyone except your confessor or with me. Although heaven knows the damage is already done. Do you know what you've started?
Reverend Father, with all due respect, I don't know that I actually started anything.
What?
Well, I mean, yesterday being Sunday, we weren't required to keep silent, and at recreation, I just answered the fellows' questions.
Well, your
I thought they
fellows
just
have
wanted
cooked up a very cute explanation. Did you know it was the blessed Leibowitz himself you met out there?
Oh, no, my Lord Abbot, I'm sure it couldn't have been. The blessed martyr wouldn't do such a thing.
Wouldn't do such a what thing?
Well, he wouldn't threaten somebody physically with a staff.
Oh, I don't know about that. It was you he was threatening, wasn't it?
Well, yes.
Yes, I thought so. Now, I doubt if there are very many people the Beatus would threaten with a stick. But you... All right, son, all right. Dear God. Who do you suppose he could have been?
I thought perhaps he was a pilgrim on his way to visit our shrine, Reverend Father.
It isn't a shrine yet, and you're not to call it that. And anyway, he wasn't. Or at least, he didn't. And he didn't pass the gates, unless the watch was asleep. And the novice on watch denies being asleep.
If the Reverend Father Abbot will forgive me, I've been on watch a few times myself.
And?
Well, on a bright day when there's nothing moving, after a few hours you just start looking up at the buzzards.
Oh, you do you? When you're supposed to be watching the trail?
And if you stare at the sky too long, you just kind of blank out. It's not really asleep, but sort of preoccupied.
So that's what you do when you're on watch, do you?
No, not necessarily. I mean, no, Reverend Father. I wouldn't know it if I had, I don't think. But Brother a brother I relieved once was like that. He didn't even know it was time for the watch to change. He was just sitting there in the tower and staring up at the sky with his mouth open in a daze.
Yes. Well, you could be right about the watch. Yes, he could have missed seeing the old man. But tell me he was just an ordinary old man. Not anything more. Not an angel. Not a Beatus.
Reverend Father, do angels or saints cast shadows?
Yes. I mean, no. How should I know? He did cast a shadow, didn't he?
Well, it was such a small shadow you could hardly see it.
What?
It was almost noon.
Oh, you imbecile, you imbecile. Wasn't he just an ordinary old man?
My Lord Abbot, you don't suppose he might have been...
I'm asking you not to suppose. I'm asking you to be flatly certain. Was he or was he not an ordinary flesh and blood person?
I think he was flesh and blood, Reverend Father, but not exactly ordinary. In some ways, he was rather extraordinary.
What ways?
Well, like... Oh, how straight he could spit.
Dear God.
And he could read. I think.
Oh.
The abbot closed his eyes and rubbed his temples.
Get out. Get out.
He said at last.
At once, Reverend Father.
Without opening his eyes.
Who could he have been?
Mystified by the whole thing, Francis went back to the desert that same day. Interest in the old pilgrim surprised him. Even the abbot had summoned him not to ask about the box, but to ask about the old man. His fellow novices asked him 100 questions about the pilgrim, to which he could reply only,
I didn't notice. I wasn't looking right then. If he said, I don't remember. I didn't notice.
So he questioned himself.
Should I have noticed? Was I stupid not to watch what he did? Wasn't I paying enough attention to what he said?
He brooded on it in the darkness while the wolves prowled about his new encampment and filled the nights with their howling. He caught himself brooding on it during times of the day that were assigned as proper for prayers and spiritual exercises of the vocational vigil. And he confessed as much to Prior Cherokee the next time the priest rode his Sunday
I can't
circuits.
seem to get my mind off of the old man.
Yes,
My
yes.
vocation
Well,
seems-
now, Francis, don't let the romantic imaginations of the others bother you. You have enough trouble with your own. They don't think up questions like that on the basis of what might be true. They concoct the questions on the basis of what might be sensational if it happened to be true. But it's ridiculous. I can tell you, the Reverend Father Abbot has ordered the entire novitiate to drop the subject. There really wasn't anything about the old man to, well, suggest the supernatural, was there?
Brother Francis began to wonder himself. If there had been a suggestion of the supernatural, he'd not noticed it.
But then there's lots of questions I can't answer. So I guess I didn't really notice very much.
The questions made him feel guilty about his failure to observe. Had he interpreted events in terms of his own interests? Had he? Did he truly have a vocation? Was he wrong to suspect that God had beckoned him to become a professed monk of the order?
Should I do something else?
There was no returning to his homeland, the Utah. As a small child, he'd been sold to a shaman. Having run away, he could not return because in running he had stolen the shaman's property, himself. And while thievery was an honorable profession among the Utah, getting caught was a capital offense when the thief's victim was the tribal warlock.
So what else is there?
What else indeed? Now in the 26th century, 600 years after the flame deluge, the world was very lightly settled. There were mostly small, scattered communities who lived by hunting, by gathering, and by primitive agriculture. The schooling Francis had been given at the Abbey prepared him for nothing of practical value in a dark, ignorant world. He was a booklegger, a memorizer, a preserver of the memorabilia. What else?
There doesn't seem to be much else I could do with my life if I'm not called to the order. At least not much else I'd like to do.
His certainty of his vocation, although not broken, had been slightly bent, and he was unhappy enough to be overcome by temptation. So that on Palm Sunday, with only 6 days of starvation remaining until the end of Lent, Prior Cherokee heard from Francis, or from the shriveled, sun-scorched remains of Francis, a few brief croaks which constituted the most succinct confession Cherokee ever heard.
Bless me, Father. I ate a lizard.
Cherokee, for many years confessor to fasting penitents, replied with perfect equanimity.
Was it an abstinence day? Did you artificially prepare it?
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
And then it was over. The vocational vigils were over. It was Holy Saturday. The monks carried the novices in one at a time, famished and raving. Francis, 30 pounds lighter than on Ash Wednesday. When they set him on his feet in his own cell, he staggered, and before he reached the bunk, he fell. The brothers hoisted him into it, bathed him, shaved him, anointed his blistered skin, while he babbled about something in a burlap loincloth, sometimes calling it an angel, sometimes a saint, frequently using the name of Leibowitz and trying to apologize. His brethren, forbidden to speak of the matter, exchanged significant glances or nodded mysteriously among themselves. Reports filtered to the abbot, who sent for Francis.
Do you deny saying these things?
I don't remember saying them, my Lord Abbot. I may have been raving.
Would you say it again now?
About the pilgrim being the Beatus? Oh, no, Reverend Father.
Then assert the contrary.
I don't think the pilgrim was the Beatus.
Why not just a straightforward, he was not?
Well, never having seen the Blessed Leibowitz personally, I
Enough,
wouldn't know
too
it
much.
myself.
That's all I want to see or hear of you for a long, long time. Out! But just one thing. Don't expect to profess your vows with the others this year. You won't be permitted.
Nor was he permitted to talk about the pilgrim, the relics, the fallout shelter. Still, he could not help hearing things now and then. He knew in one of the Abbey workshops, monks were at work on the documents, not only his own, but others that had been found in the ancient room. But then, the abbot ordered the shelter closed.
Closed. Scarcely been touched.
No attempt to penetrate further the secrets of the shelter?
Closed. They haven't even tried to see what's behind the inner door, hatch 2. Or to find out what's inside sealed environment. They haven't even removed the stones. Closed.
Closed. The investigation choked off without apparent cause. Francis returned to the desert the following year and fasted again in solitude. Once more he returned, weak and emaciated, and was summoned into the presence of Abbot Arcos, who demanded to know whether Francis claimed further conferences with members of the heavenly hosts.
Oh, no, my Lord Abbot. Nothing by day but buzzards.
By night?
Only wolves, I think.
Now, what about last year?
The old man?
The old man.
Mr. Marcos?
Just an old man, nothing more. We're sure of that now.
I think it was just an old man, my lord.
Oh.
Arcos reached wearily for the discipline.
Deo gracias. Deo gracias.
By the way, I intended to mention...
Yes, Reverend Father.
No vows this year.
Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison.
A Canticle for Leibowitz, Part 3 of a series in 15 parts. Adapted from a novel by Walter Miller, Jr. Jim Freeman plays Francis. The narrator is Carol Collin. Adaptation by John Reeves. Music by Greg Fish and Bob Budney, and the Edgewood College Chant Group. Special effects, Vic Marsh. Engineering and mixing, Marv Nunn. The program was directed by Carl Schmidt. A Canticle for Leibowitz is produced by Marv Nunn and Carl Schmidt for WHA and NPR, with funds from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the National Endowment for the Arts.